Zzz. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Environmental Podcast for our first ever open air session where we're open to the beautiful noises of the outdoors. We have some birds chirping, some winds flowing through the trees, and
a chainsaw in the distance.
yeah, cutting down some trees. I'm sure it's graceful.
Yeah, I'm sure the person cutting down the trees is really just doing the bare minimum. They're thinking, well, this branch is a bit in the way.
It's a graceful act of destruction on this calm Wednesday morning.
Yes. So what's today's topic, Aaron?
Today's topic is solar power. We did an episode on wind energy many moons ago.
Yeah, and that was really fun to do.
Picking up that thread of describing the history, technology, and future of renewable energy.
Yeah, I'm really excited about solar because out of all of the renewable energies, it has the most potential for really just being anywhere in the world and doing a lot of good.
You mean because it's so small?
So small, it's pretty accessible, it's less expensive. We'll get into all that.
Solar's so cool.
It is. Where's a good place to start? Should we start with the history, the aesthetics of solar panels?
Did you have a quote to start us off with?
I didn't.
I have a poem.
Ooh, okay.
So this week I kind of wrote a poem which is loosely split into 3 stanzas, but maybe I'll just do the first 2 right now.
All right.
Okay, it goes like this. Solar, that's the style. Fetching, farming, fusion, from the sky to my sundial. Solar, that's the style. Let the carbon rest, and take us to the golden isle. With air so blessed and land fertile, we'll all soon become agrophiles.
I like that.
Yeah, it was definitely very inspired by WALL-E.
Yeah.
And
which we watched recently and really loved.
yeah, because WALL-E's solar powered. So let's start with that. Let's start with WALL-E.
Okay.
Great character.
Yes.
And he's just this tiny little garbage cleaning robot with a heart of gold. Let's be honest.
Heart of gold.
I kind of want to get a WALL-E tattoo, but, maybe I'll discuss that with you off air.
Yeah, for those listening, Aaron has no tattoos. So this would be his first and probably only tattoo.
I don't know why I said it anyway.
It's funny.
Yeah, he's a tiny little robot, and I said to you just before this episode, I like robos. I think we should have more solar-powered robos, which are just doing little things, sweeping roads and stuff. Which we haven't really talked about robots much.
No, we haven't.
But what I meant by that is that we could integrate solar into our technology in usable and futuristic ways.
Yeah, because I feel like a part of a really nice, sustainable future is, yes, everything's renewable, so the air would be cleaner, just everything would be cleaner. But, we also want it to look really nice. So maybe we could have little robots, scrubbing the, I don't know.
Kind of like the Flintstones.
Yeah, because, it's not, because solar panels, for instance, they need to be cleaned all the time. So, that'd be a really good job for robots to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just, little tasks like that, which we don't think it's good for robots to be replacing people's jobs.
No.
But there's some things that maybe it would make it
Well, robots are small and
easier.
nimble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know my thoughts on robots, but
No, me neither.
I think it's AI which I'm mostly distrustful of, not robotics.
Yeah, because
itself.
robotics have been around for a while and we don't even think about them.
Yeah, I think we're generally against the kind of automation of life.
Yeah.
But there's a place for future technology is what we're saying, and hopefully that can be fueled by solar.
Yeah.
As my poem said.
Very cool. I like those thoughts to start us off with.
So for our wind energy episode, we started basically from ancient times where people were traveling over oceans and rivers using wind.
Yeah.
So is there something similar for solar power?
Yeah, so literally since the beginning of time, people have been using solar power to heat up water, heat up rooms. It literally is the fuel of life. It's what drives photosynthesis and allows us to eat and breathe. So solar, I'm not going to get into that stuff because that's just more about biological and natural processes. But the first time it was harnessed for human use was in the 7th century BC. And they were using magnifying glasses to concentrate solar energy and start fires.
Oh, nice.
And then in the 3rd century BC, Romans were using what they called burning mirrors. So it was a maze of mirrors which would light sacred torches. So it became a part of their rituals, I guess.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. I thought it was cool because it was they'd be able to start fires without the labor that it would traditionally take with rubbing two sticks together or whatever, or flint and...
It's also like a blend of technology and mysticism,
Yeah.
which we don't really get anymore.
No.
You know, cutting edge technology used to be about connecting with the divine and stuff.
Yeah.
The Egyptians did it with pyramids,
Mm.
and those were with stars, I guess, so I guess we wouldn't call that solar.
No, but...
And it wasn't powering anything. But I just mean things were about the sun. You know,
Yeah.
the sun was always used to represent the divine,
Yeah.
and ancient peoples were often terrified whenever the sun would go away at night or during winter.
I mean, it makes sense.
The sun meant comfort and life and prosperity.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're coming back to that.
Yes. So some other technologies. Sunrooms have been around pretty much forever, but then in the 18th century in Europe, they became so prevalent that everyone got like sun rights. So it became like a right in their constitution or in their law that everyone had the right to, I guess, have a property which faced the right way to build a sunroom or
Do
something.
you know what my favorite sunroom is?
No.
In Kiki's delivery service. Her mum has a sunroom and it's covered in plants and like witches'
Oh my
potions and
goodness.
stuff.
That's like, I'd be happy whenever we someday buy or build a house. A sunroom is probably like the one thing that I want on the list of. I just would love it. And it would be filled with plants. Like they'd be coming from the ceilings. It would be amazing.
Okay.
Sunrooms make me really happy.
Keep
But
going.
yeah, Kiki's is definitely a good example of that. And then there's a Greek legend about the scientist Archimedes that he was setting fire to incoming Roman Empire ships using a bronze shield. So like he set them
Whoa.
up to like concentrate the sun energy and then like aimed them at the ships and like set fire to them.
That's pretty
And,
cool.
yeah, and
It sounds really false though.
In the 50s, the Navy, the American Navy tested it, and it worked.
What kind of ships were they? Wooden?
Wooden ships.
Hmm.
It worked.
How strong must that sun be? I mean, I guess it was in the Mediterranean, so
Yeah.
very bright.
So basically, Archimedes had some laser beams. Kind of cool. And then I kind of jumped from like these more mythological instances of solar energy to 1839,
Okay.
when French physicist Edmond Becquerel discovered the photovoltaic effect, which is basically what powers
Solar panels.
Yes. So he was experimenting with a cell which was made of two metal electrodes. So there's like the two different ends of a battery basically, and you put it into a conducting solution. For the first like 100 or so years, they were like open, so like it was just like a liquid sloshing around.
Yeah.
And then we needed to try and figure out how to maybe like close that, and then so he figured that out while messing around with a cell, like a battery cell, and he figured that it worked better when it was exposed to the sun. That's when it started. Where did your research pick up?
With modern PV cells.
Okay,
Basically, how they work.
cool. So I can keep going through a little bit of the history. I have a couple more milestones. So that was like, they discovered this effect in 1883. An American inventor created the first working PV cell, and it cost about $300 per watt and was 1% effective
Yeah.
or efficient.
Wow.
Yeah. And then in 1905, Albert Einstein, when he published his works on relativity, he also published some things about PV cells, and it kind of brought it to the mainstream because he was so famous. And then, so he like made the potential known to people, and then with the space race, it became really prevalent, and NASA was working on developing really efficient PVs, and then they started putting satellites and putting them on the ISS and so on. And then in the 70s, when there was the oil crisis, solar just started to boom. The industry boomed and brought us to today, where we've managed to reduce the price from $300 per watt to 50 cents per watt.
Yeah.
And change the efficiency from 1% to, in labs is 20%, but in practice it's 15 to 18% efficient, which is pretty good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's pretty good for solar. The thing with solar is that it will always be inefficient compared to other means of generation,
Yeah.
be they fossil fuels or hydro or wind.
Exactly. Because it's just like there's so much from the sun as well, just so much energy.
Well, that's the thing. That's why it doesn't really matter the inefficiency. If you can get the price down, just have more modules.
Yeah.
So that was a nice history. I like that you mentioned the space race, because we're going to be talking as much about the science as we will be about the
Social significance.
Yeah, the abstract social and artistic significance of solar, because that's what kind of strikes me anyway as more interesting. And the space race in the 50s was just generally this time of kind of technological optimism.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
You know, then it was nuclear. It was like, this is going to launch us into a whole period of economic and social prosperity, and we're exploring these new frontiers and stuff like that. And that kind of attitude, I feel, is really gone today. You know, it's mostly just pessimism. You know, with reason, you understand why, because
of course,
a ton of reasons that we won't go into. But when researching for this episode anyway, I got optimistic and excited about the future for once. Because when I'm actually looking at the numbers of renewables, especially solar, and the technology, its adoption, its price going down, and just various kind of plans in place, I'm like, okay, you know, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, the cynic always says, well, for the last 40 years, people have been talking about renewables, saying they're just on the horizon and they'll soon be, you know, widespread. But it's not that we're still saying that. The fact is that that is happening now. Yeah. Which is what excites me. It makes me happy.
Yeah, that is exciting, because it's hard sometimes to be optimistic. It's like, we're going to need massive social and, like, restructuring of everything. But it's like, if we could clean up the grid,
that's a huge part of the battle.
Then it would basically fix most issues, in the short term at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, like, it's great to have electric cars, but if you're plugging them in and getting the power from coal, it doesn't do much different than just burning fossil fuels.
So shall we get into the science of the modern PV cell?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
You've heard that they use silicon?
Yes.
Silicon is a really neat kind of semi-conducting material, and PV cells are, let's say, broadly speaking, this will be a bit of a generalization, but there are two sheets of silicon and they've been charged individually, so one has a net positive charge and one has a net negative charge, as you were just describing, with the two parts of a battery.
Yep.
And they are placed in a way which will be struck by sunlight, and the light hits the PV cell, it's absorbed, and it knocks loose some of the electrons in the silicon. And the electrons are, because of the difference in charge, they transfer across the
PV boundary?
Yeah, across the PV boundary, across the two sheets, which forms an electric current. And that's how it works. Cool.
I looked a little bit into batteries, because that's kind of the biggest issue with solar energy, is that at night the sun goes away. So we need ways to store all of this energy during the day. Because during the day, for the most part, solar panels produce more than is used by, like, the house that has installed them. So we just need a way to store the energy. And batteries have been around for a while, just like in this open, liquidy mess. But now there's lithium-ion batteries, which are really powerful, but they use natural resources which are really hard to find, and they're currently mined using really unethical practices. So hopefully, as solar energy becomes more prevalent, this industry will be cleaned up, because there is ways to mine the lithium that are ethical. We just need to do it. And batteries are cool because they basically, you install it and it already has a positive negative like split and works, but then when you attach the solar panel to it, it like reverses the charge. And then so like it pushes the electrons in the opposite direction, and they all get stored in the negative electrode. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and then once you're ready to release it, you just like disconnect the PV, and then they start flowing the opposite direction. So it's basically just pushing electrons around.
So it's kind of like a dam.
Very good metaphor.
Yeah, because the reason I made that metaphor is because I was looking into other battery tech, and you mentioned lithium ion and how that industry will probably and hopefully be cleaned up as it becomes necessary for that to happen.
Yes.
And the other exciting thing about battery technology is that it just seems like one of those things where, as a capitalist would say, the market will do its thing. Yeah. Because as it becomes necessary for bigger and cheaper batteries, companies and engineers and scientists will find ways to make that happen. Yeah. Through ingenuity and creativity, and some other forms of battery that aren't just electric batteries like lithium ion are flow batteries and compressed air batteries, which I was looking at.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those. There's really cool structures, and we looked at them once, and we were like, these look like the pyramids, or like equally as
the biggest issue is kind of making them consumer friendly, I would say, disseminating them like that, which is why I think there's such an excitement about Tesla and the things they do, because it's immediately for consumers, despite the price right now still being out of most people's range. Yeah. But I think they're the only ones still flying the flag for what we would call that 50s technological optimism.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, how many kind of companies or startups or organizations could most people name that are doing cool, future, sustainable technological things? I feel not many.
No, everything's more just like about pocket technology, I guess.
Yeah.
Nothing like really optimistic and futuristic. It's just like, oh, yeah, the planet might burn, but you can now download apps for your phone 2 times faster.
Yeah, it's about ambition, right?
Yeah, it's like dream big.
Yeah, so the Tesla battery I'm talking about is called the Powerwall, and it's that commercial product which you kind of just has to be installed, and it looks just like a white box panel, I guess, and has a 10-year warranty, which is something I looked into because I know a lot of the concerns about batteries is how long they will last, and a usable capacity of 13.5 kilowatt hours. And it said that because you're mostly off the grid if you have one of, solar panels and one of these power walls.
Yeah.
Or completely off the grid, should I say. So that's pretty, self-sustaining.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's cool. That's the thing. It's like when people, or when even states or provinces mandate renewable technology, there's always the fear that it would fail, I guess. Whereas with like natural resources, fossil fuels, like they've been around for so long, like they're really reliable, I guess.
Right.
But if we can just have a battery which is equally as reliable, which I don't think is that hard, it just seems to be like pursued, and it seems like that's what Tesla's doing.
Well, what I would say, let's ask this first. In our kind of, years away from now, ideal degrowth world, is there such a thing as an energy grid, or is everyone self-sufficient? Because I think there'd still be need for a grid. I think so.
It's
a neat way of connecting people.
Yeah, and I think it keeps the cost down as well.
If you're really rich and individualistic, make your own energy and sell it back.
Yeah, have your own windmill or whatever.
But a grid is kind of a cool way of keeping everyone connected.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be like just kind of a case-by-case thing, because we still don't know which is the best for the individual. I imagine like some people would want to have their own solar panels because then they can make money off of them. That's interesting to think about, the future perfect sustainable city.
And even if, the biggest kind of criticism of renewables, I think, usually coming from ignorance, is that the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, etc. Even if people can't wrap their head around batteries, it doesn't mean that automatically every fossil fuel plant or nuclear power plant will be dismantled.
Yeah.
So those could always be fired up for
like an emergency.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's not a bad thought, because it's like, if we're using fossil fuels one day a year, like the darkest day of the year or something,
well,
it's just so much less of an impact.
Realistically, I think solar can maybe top out at something like 30% of our energy production.
Okay.
I think wind and hydro can do the bulk.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exact percentages. No one does, because they're kind of fantastical predictions.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that the main, or just as equally as important as revamping the energy grid, is just using less energy.
Yeah. So our habits and making things more efficient.
Our habits, more efficient technology, and also just designing homes and buildings in ways which trap energy and use things smartly and have well-placed windows and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's all of the new buildings that are built up to LEED standards, they basically don't need heat. Like, the way that they're built, the walls facing the south absorb heat in the winter and heat the building, and in the summer keeps them cool.
Yeah, that actually, I'm really interested in that.
Yeah,
building design.
It's just so simple. It's like, in theory, it's so simple.
It's basically solving the problems through engineering, which is, for me, what I think will ultimately, be the driving force behind the problems.
Yeah.
More so than politics or anything like that. I guess politics is involved in mandating that.
Yeah, but it's like changing consumer habits and changing the way, things are built and infrastructure is installed.
We mentioned Tesla, and another kind of big company, which I guess is in the environmental conversation, is Apple, because they have kind of pledged to go zero carbon, and they have a neat, sustainable headquarters in California.
Yeah.
And we were saying that if those companies can do that, then every company can.
Yeah.
And also that is more important than homes.
Yeah.
Going solar or anything like that, which is still neat. And, mostly I would say for the social significance rather than the actual cutting of emissions.
Yeah.
Which is obviously not insignificant. But, yeah, I guess they both are changes which need to be happening at the same time.
Yeah. But if, like, the production line is all sustainably run, that's what's going to cut the emissions. And if the transportation, I think, also is important to become solar or become renewable, because if cars and trucks and planes all were running on solar energy, then that'd be good, because the transportation industry is one of the biggest emitters.
100%.
Yeah.
One thing so let's go back to batteries, which
Okay.
are especially important kind of in the absence of a strong grid.
Yeah.
We have strong grids here, but in developing countries, a lot of the times people are on their own, which is why you see some kind of makeshift energy use sometimes with burning of cow manure or bad things like that, which are huge emissions. One project I saw was that the World Bank has set up the Accelerating Battery Storage for Development program, and the goal is to finance 17.5 gigawatts of battery storage by 2025, which is more than triple the current capacity of developing countries.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think too much about the developing world, but solar is so accessible because it really isn't that expensive. Like, installing a wind turbine is, and hooking it up so that everyone can get power from it.
Well, there's an upfront cost for all renewables.
Of course.
But one thing I saw was that in the hottest areas in the world, solar is already the cheapest form of energy.
That makes sense.
So it's just about getting it there,
Yeah.
Teaching people.
Yeah,
and
like
the usual
subsidizing the upfront.
Subsidizing it. The usual discussions of development and sustainability.
Yeah.
So solar is a good kind of case study for that.
Yeah.
One thing that's exciting about about sustainable technologies in developing countries is that since a lot of them never grew a giant dependence on fossil fuels, in big plants or even nuclear, they can kind of skip that stage of energy production, which much of the developed countries went through.
Yeah.
And are trying, it's so hard to get out of now.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And there's always debates about if it's ethical to say you need to skip this stage to developing countries, but I think it is, because for everyone's best interest.
Solar installations are as common and popular and widespread now as wind turbine production, which is neat. And I saw that the plan for 2020, I'm sure this was ruined by coronavirus.
Yeah.
But the plan was for more than 115 gigawatts of solar energy to be installed this year, which would be more than any other energy source.
That's really great.
Yeah. Especially, I didn't know this. I thought that renewable energy production was still slow and still, a 5-year to 10-year thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's happening now is very exciting to me.
It is. And I thought as well that they just kind of had given up on it. But it's good to see that would be the leading installation, which is great.
One of the biggest concerns which I saw online about the widespread adoption of solar energy was the land use required. Because they're small and they have to be laid out horizontally pretty much.
Yeah.
So they take up a lot of room. And so far they've just been used in empty stretches of land.
Yeah.
Or kind of old farmland or things like that in the desert. But we saw some neat technologies such as them floating on the ocean.
Yeah.
Affectionately known as photovoltaic.
I like that.
We also saw some technologies like solar windows. We know they're used on roofs. I think you can repurpose parking lots, and just generally what you said about them earlier being kind of the smallest and the easiest to fit into existing places.
Yeah.
We can have these in the city. We can have these all around us.
Yeah.
And that's something which I just find really neat and really significant, because that's never really been the case with energy production in the industrialized world.
Yeah, they've always been offset,
because no one wants to live by huge smog-producing factories.
Yeah, but everyone wants to live by their
Or no one wants to live in the
panel.
shadow of a nuclear reactor.
No.
But the fact that we could have our energy production clean and all around us just kind of, I think, erodes this gap which has previously existed, where we plug something into the wall but we don't really feel or know where it's coming from, and we feel very disconnected from it, and it kind of outsources energy production from our mind, so we never have to think about it. But the fact that it could always be around us, kids could learn about them, because how many kids have seen a solar panel in a class? I think not many, but that could be a thing, because the school would be powered by solar panels.
Exactly. And it's cool because we were saying you would need to, like, change habits. People would need to reduce their energy usage. But if you have your solar panel on your front lawn, then you would, like, have a better connection
You'd care
with it.
for it. Just like WALL-E.
Just like WALL-E.
We're
If
bringing it
everyone
full
had
circle.
a pet WALL-E, then they would love it. And then they would say, don't worry, I'll only plug my phone in when I need it. Or, not that they would have phones in our ideal world, but, you know. I'll only plug in my stove when I need it.
Yeah. I just think integrating energy production into our day-to-day human environment is so cool.
That
would really change the way our minds work and the way we consider energy. One other cool technological project, I guess, that I found was the solar car.
Okay.
Because, you know, we're both against cars.
Yes.
To be honest, I just wanted to see what it would be like, or if there were any consumer ready.
Yeah.
Because I know these things are always in labs or racing against each other in like specialized races.
Yeah.
You know, the technology is always being worked on, but I wanted to, just like the hydrogen car, but I wanted to see how far along it was. And there is one which is scheduled to start production in 2021.
Cool.
Consumer available. You know, you can pre-order it next year.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the Lightyear 1. And it would be coming in at a price of around $135,000 US.
Okay.
It says it has 54 square feet of solar panels, a range of about 700 kilometers. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not too bad because electric cars have a range of like 100 kilometers.
But I was thinking not just, you know, solar individual cars, but just have them on top of buses. Have them on top of trams. Have them on top of trains.
Exactly.
Not to be the main energy source, but just as a case of why not. Just put them on everywhere available, basically.
Exactly.
Every available surface.
Yeah.
Slap it on. Solar hats.
Solar hats. Solar watches.
We saw a video of those solar fabrics. People were putting in tiny solar cells or PV cells.
Onto yarn.
Yeah, weaving them into yarn, into our fabrics. And, you know, I don't know why that would... Oh, it said you could charge your phone.
Yeah, I guess.
It's probably not good to be wearing the energy production. You know, we don't want to increase dependence like that.
Yeah.
But increasing our own knowledge of it. That's what I mean.
Yeah, and I think putting them on buses, like some of the buses around where we live, I think one or two of them are like all clean and they have solar panels on them, which is cool. I had a fun fact about solar production.
Let's go for it.
So each hour, 430 quintillion joules of energy hit the Earth's surface from the sun. In a year, the entire world uses 410 quintillion joules of energy. So if we could harness all the sun's energy for 1 hour, we'd have more than enough energy to
of course that's
power
not
the whole
possible.
world. Of course not, but I mean, it's just like that's the
scale
level,
we're dealing with.
yeah,
And
like,
the same with wind. It's similar numbers with wind.
Yeah, it is.
Which is why these two are so awe-inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to mention?
I had another thought because we mentioned this at the beginning of wind, that like wind is actually solar energy because it changes the temperature and produces the currents.
Yep.
But technically, all energy is solar energy because winds and tides are both in relation to the sun, and so is wood, and oil is technically just plant material that's been compressed for millions of years. So solar energy is
I guess that's true. Although I think tidal energy is lunar energy because the moon pulls the tides.
It's the relationship between the moon and the sun, isn't it? Pulling the tides?
The sun does a little bit, but the moon does...
a little bit. Most of it. I
No.
Sun does a little bit of something.
I'm not going to let you have that one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, it was fun to make.
I enjoyed it. I have a final poem to close us out with.
Great.
It's a short one.
Okay.
It goes, "That which fills flowers, teaches trees, decrees dawn, and paints Pizarro is good enough for us."
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh, I forgot to mention, the birds outside my window hatched this morning, and
the eggs?
they were the eggs, and I've never seen like really fresh baby birds, and they made me a little emotional. I was really happy about those. So
it's the beauty of nature and art.
So
it's
nice.
all coming together.
Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoyed this episode and enjoyed Aaron's poems because I sure did.
You can find us on Instagram at @the_environmental, where we will be posting cool solar-related content and probably some science content. We have some neat graphic design and general reminders to get off of Instagram and the internet.
Yeah. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, and we release new episodes every Monday. Have a great
summer.